Okay, on the show today, Shaun Galanos. So Shaun is someone I've known for a little while. He hosts a podcast about Lurve, does courses on Lurve. He's very popular with middle-aged women around the world. I've got to know him a bit personally outside of the podcast, so I'm looking forward to this. He says some really good stuff about dating, intimacy, romance, kind of no nonsense. So, Shaun, welcome.
Hey, Mark. Great to be here. Really, really happy to chat with you.
How did you get into your topic? I mean, does you just wake up in the morning one day and go, I am the love guru? Like, how did you get into it, man?
So I think, I always had like sort of a bottomless well of passion for the topic, right? So I think you have to have that. And then didn't really have any training, but I found myself driving a taxi in San Francisco back in 2014. And I got bored driving, and my friend said, you should record your conversations with your passengers. And so I called it the Love Drive. I put cameras, lights, and microphones in just a regular old taxi in San Francisco.
Right.
And people would hop in. I'd say, welcome to the Love Drive, and then I'd ask them some questions, some real basic questions back in the day, how do you feel about sex when you're on your period? How do you feel about prostitution? Why do men shave their balls? Kind of like really low-hanging fruit stuff. And that's where it started. That's where the whole thing started. And then I became certified as a coach. I started a podcast. I made videos. I wrote blogs and started coaching people and then doing courses. And so I've just been creating content around sex, love, and dating for the last 8 years.
And you've totally blown up on Instagram as well, right? People like your little Q&As and your shorts. Like, you've got a big following.
Yeah, and I attribute a lot of that to the pandemic and me hopping on TikTok. And then there was a lot of rapid growth with TikTok around that time, and that moved over to Instagram. But then also I think people just like the message. It's a lot of no sugarcoating,
People like the vibe, don't they? Like, what is it? Because there's a lot of stuff out there, on dating. There's a lot of kind of men's stuff. I mean, I don't know so much about the women's kind of scene, but I'm guessing it's pretty crowded. But do people like your vibe? Like, what is it about how you do what you do that people like?
I think it's that I've always been very approachable. People really like to approach me with stuff. And the fact that I am preaching a very honest message, which is basically just be honest. And that is not groundbreaking, but I actually show people how to do it. Right? I actually give them the language, which a lot of people really struggle with. They either struggle with not having the right language to ask for what they want or to say what they want to say, or they're really fearful of rejection.
Okay.
Right? So I kind of walk people through both of those.
And I made a joke about middle-aged women earlier, but who would you say is your kind of average client?
If I look at my Instagram, it's 90% women between the ages of 25 and 45. That's the bulk in America.
And what mostly in the States. And what are they wanting? Because when I listen to women of that demographic, a lot of what you hear is just like, hey, there's no good man. I can't find a man. Modern dating sucks. Internet dating's rubbish. I kind of hear a lot of complaints around those kind of things. Like, what is it that group primarily wants and gets from your work?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people have a really negative outlook towards the prospect of finding love, right? They've been on dating sites and they've really, really struggled. I think people have a really hard time letting go of the Disney, the narrative that they're going to find the one, right? So people are looking for the one. They're looking for a needle in a haystack, and that's unrealistic, because I think the reality is that you can find a lot of people to have successful, loving relationships with. So what do I give? I think I do give people some hope. I think I remember I was in Berlin a couple weeks ago, and I met this tantric masseuse, and she goes,
Berlin.
Yeah, totally. I went to a play party for body workers, which is can you imagine a better blend?
Okay, yeah, sounds like a good. How do you get that invite? Sounds good.
I just stumbled upon, actually, one of my followers pushed me that way. They said, oh, you got to go check out this bodywork bazaar. And I did. And I'm so glad I did. But she said, oh, you're a love coach. You give people hope. And I go, yeah, what's the other option? Not giving people hope? Just telling them to forget it and to let go of your dream of finding love. Like, I just don't feel like that's helpful at all.
There's no hope in Berlin. The Russians crushed it.
She was actually British. She was actually British.
Oh, there's a dark vibe, right? It's a dark vibe. I might know them, actually. I'm wondering. Okay, moving on. So, hope. What's wrong with the kind of modern dating scene then? Because, like it does seem a difficult thing for a lot of people.
There's a lot going wrong there. I mean, I think dating apps has kind of ruined it a little bit for everybody. In one way, I think it's helped people that were more socially awkward or didn't know how to read signs or are afraid of talking to people without knowing whether they're available or not, right? So that has kind of solved that problem for some people. It's also made people incredibly lazy. Lazy, right? Just like, why would I even attempt to go out and talk to someone not knowing if they're available or not knowing if they're single or not, when I could just sit on my couch and swipe?
Well, it takes out the huge social awkwardness of, mostly guys have done this traditionally, of walking across the room or the bar or the gym, wherever it is, and saying, hey, in some way, I'm interested in you. Are you single? Yeah. Are you available? Like, that is hugely uncomfortable for a lot of people. And the dating apps take that out because it's like, okay, you only get a match if they've already said kind of like, I like your face, right?
Yeah. Well, the problem, what they've also introduced then as well on the flip side is that people are just chronically dissatisfied with what they have in front of them. And so dating apps deliver the promise of better if you keep swiping.
Right. Like there's and of course, they're financially incentivized to not really want people to have long-term partners. Yeah. It kind of objectifies people into the face. Like I can be fairly confident which women tend to like, but that doesn't come across in a photo. Yeah. It's just simply the most photogenic person seems it does the best. And I think it's pretty hard evidence on this. There's data out there, isn't there now? This isn't just opinions, there's data.
Oh, no, the data is that the top 10% of conventionally attractive people get something like 90% of the likes.
And I saw that what it creates is a sort of scalability, right? That I remember once being in Moscow where there aren't as many men and women. And, my value's up as a non-Russian person. This was some time ago, I should say, because since I haven't been there in a while. And I had 1,000 likes. Or a Ukrainian friend of mine showed me her Tinder. And she had she was a beautiful young Ukrainian woman, aesthetically, very good looking on the, inside and out actually, but certainly you could see from the outside. She's a very pretty person. And she had sort of 10,000 matches. And she was sort of, do I go for the rock star? Do I go for the millionaire? Do I go for the model? And she just had all these options. And what I've heard that internet dating basically does is a very small percentage of people are, particularly in heterosexual relationships, right? A very small percentage of the guys have kind of all the sex options. But what that means is there's a large number of men who aren't getting laid. And there's a large number of women who aren't getting relationships.
Sure.
Like that just sounds like it sucks for everyone.
Yeah, there's people drinking from a fire hose, right? Which is not good because then what you have is choice paralysis, right? They've done studies on this where they set up, sort of a control group or a study at a supermarket, and they asked people if they were gonna, to go buy jam, and what they did is they stockpiled the aisle with like 50 different types of jams, and most people came out with no jam, but when there was only 6. Their sales of jam went through the roof, right?
I feel that way in US supermarkets. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it's a lot of
so
choice.
you get paralyzed with all the choices. You think that there's something better on the other side, or on the flip side, you've got nothing, right? So it's incredibly discouraging to have no hits, right? No matches.
That was me in Paris. 0 matches.
Yeah,
I remember that. It's bad in England, but in Paris it was really bad. Like I was traveling around a lot for work at the time. I was doing most of my dating, and I did a sort of study of matches per country. And also I had the advantage of professional photography because I have that for my work, and I found that made a huge difference. Just the pictures looking nicer because I had pro pictures. At a certain point, I went from guy in the mirror with his iPhone to I've got pro pictures for work. I might as well use those kind of thing.
Well, so interestingly, with the pro pictures, yeah, they will increase your likelihood of getting a match, but they will also increase people's likelihoods of thinking that you're fake, that you're not actually a real
Oh,
person.
really? I think, okay, maybe
Yeah.
this person's not an
Yeah.
actual
So
human.
you want one, and then you want a bunch of action shots, regular shots, iPhone shots, you know?
Okay. But you know what? Just for people listening, just go through that again. What should people's photo stack be? It would be to be optimized.
I mean, you could start with a headshot, you know, pro headshot. I think,
Okay,
I think your first photo should definitely be like a photo of you smiling, right? And I think we know this, right? Showing teeth equals likability. So show the smile, right? Even in marketing, right? Like that's
yeah. Well, Americans like to show their teeth a lot, and when they smile, we Brits don't smile with our teeth. That's not
okay. Well, you don't have to do it, but a big picture of you smiling is sort of photo number one. And then if photos of you doing the things that you like doing, because that's going to make it easier for someone to respond to your profile. Oh, this guy likes to ski, or she likes to rock climb, or whatever it is, right? So some action photos of you doing the stuff that you actually do, not the stuff that you like, you know, that one photo of you on a ski trip seven years ago.
The one thing that it makes you look cool.
Yeah, I think that you do.
Guys bungee jumping is the typical one, right?
Yeah, or actually in America, a lot of guys fishing.
Fishing, that's the thing. I can provide
the grip and grin, where you grip the fish and you grin. You know, there's a lot of
this with the fish. Yeah. There's I can imagine that's not. Isn't that sort of guys being a bit autistic, and like, you know, what I'd want to see is a guy who can fish. Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that are into that, you know. So I think that's it. Just don't have a bunch of photos with you and your friends, because then it becomes hard to see who you are. You know, figure out who you are. And then write. You know, I would even say write what you're looking for, because I think a lot of people struggle with the matches that they are getting. They're going on dates with people who don't want what they want. So
yeah, I remember that first question. So what are you after? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so put that in your profile. Like, hey, I'm looking for. You know, I could say I'm looking for my partner in crime, but I'm not in a rush to get there. In the meantime, happy to just meet like-minded folks. Something like that. Right. Yeah. And I think one of mine used to say, looking for my forever person, but in the meantime, also people to go climbing with. Right. So then you'd also make some friends in the process. And at the end of the day, look, dating apps are a tool. They are a tool to get you to meet other people. That's all it is. And they're also a tool to help you get really good at dating. If you're not good at dating, go on more dates, right? It's like,
the experience from them. And do you think there's a sort of, to talk about the theme of the podcast, embodiment? Like, I spoke to someone literally today, actually. He's like, hey, I met someone online. I got on really well with them. And then we met and there was nothing. And this person was surprised. And I was like, well, yeah, because chemistry, embodiment. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like there's a major flaw in any kind of embodiment app. 100. Sorry, in terms of
100%. It does not have a chemistry gauge, right? You don't know how it's going to feel in your body. There's no somatics gauge there. And I've had some matches where the text chemistry was amazing, right?
And right? Okay.
Yeah, and you could easily think that this is my person, and you meet them and it is flat, right? There is something about two people coming together that creates a certain kind of dynamic. Yeah. And sometimes that dynamic is not interesting enough.
Right. I mean, as an embodiment teacher, I was always a terrible texter and much better in person. But it's art to texting. I don't know. I think I'm too old to learn it now.
Well, yeah, texting, it's actually kind of tricky. The expectation on dating apps is that you have to be witty, right? So people are just paralyzed with how can I be the wittiest person possible? And everyone's just trying to outwit each other because that's what they want, right? They want banter.
Otherwise, it's hello, how are you? How's your day? How was your weekend?
Yeah, and don't try to outwit everybody. You'll never be the funniest person out there, right? So just like, and don't ask someone how they're doing. No one gives a fuck how you're doing, right? Like they're gonna say fine. It's such a conversation killer. How are you doing, right? Comment on the profile, right? Oh, looked like you were. I think that photo is of you in Mexico. Like, what were you doing there, right? Or like, I love Mexico, or something, right? Something that's more interesting than how you're doing or how's your weekend.
I learned this in real life, that it was way better to comment than to ask. So
Sure.
like, hey, you're like a teacher. Are you a teacher? Like, I work with loads of teachers. And then even if they're not a teacher, they're like, fuck no, I'm a doctor. You know, you're immediately into a conversation. You know?
Yeah. I think making an assumption about what they are or what they're doing is fantastic. I think it's total gold.
And what I learned as an embodiment person is like the difference between being confident and creepy in talking to someone was all about my own state, my own embodiment. And there were times when I was on a roll and I was happy and giving out good vibes, people would say, and I could talk to anyone and it'd be no problem. And other times I'd try and talk to someone and I wasn't quite in the right mood, I was a bit off, or I just got a bit nervous at the last minute because, oh my God, this woman's beautiful. And then I'd come across as off and that would be unpleasant for someone, which is the last thing I want.
Right? Yeah, that's when I go home. That is when I go home, right?
Okay,
like
tell me about that. Yeah.
So I've been to a lot of Burning Mans. I like going to Burning Man. And for people who don't know, it's a huge festival in Nevada every year, 100,000 people. And it's a playground for adults, right? Bikes, art, culture, whatever you want, dancing, and a lot of scantily clad people, right? And sometimes I would see people hooking up or in couples, and I would think to myself, I really want that, And I started getting into that energy of really seeking something. Yeah. And the desperation would just drip.
And once you're in that mode, it's no good. It's no good, is it?
It stinks, dude. It stinks. And I had to go, okay, you know what, Shaun, this is one of those nights where you go home.
Right.
And you try again tomorrow.
Yeah, I've crossed the line and it's not going to feel good.
Although, thinking about embodiment, I think what I could have done a breathwork practice. Mm-hmm. I could have done 50 push-ups. I could have done a total reset, and a body reset will often come with a mental reset.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I could have just went out looking for a fun person to talk to, not necessarily looking to hook up or to go on a date.
Yeah, that goal orientation is kind of tangible because at that point people feel objectified, right? Like, hey, I'm not a person anymore here.
I'm just you trying to fulfill your objective.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally.
So there's a lot of stuff out there for guys. A lot of it, the sort of pickup scene, which I've seen has different. There's a whole spectrum out there. Some of which I would be, I think is pretty about giving guys confidence and just helping them get experience, right up to the sort of manipulative, nasty, creepy, unpleasant. There seems to be a spectrum out there.
Yeah.
What is there for women? Like, is there advice? Like, some of my Slavic friends have told me there's like how to capture the perfect husband manuals and things like this. Like what is the advice for women that's out there?
I mean, there's the get the guy stuff. There's a lot of get the guy stuff. There's the rules for marriage. There's a guy called Matthew Hussey tells people how to get the guy.
British guy. Yeah,
British guy, really good looking dude. Very successful.
But you're way better looking than him, Shaun. Way better looking.
It's just different. It's a different kind of attractive.
No. For those not ladies, if you're not on YouTube already, make sure you pop over to YouTube at least. It's a good looking, a bit of kind of aged, grey head kind of a way. You should check Shaun out.
Shaun.
You here, Shaun. I don't know.
Yeah, the Love Drive, everybody. Go Google the Love Drive. So I think there's some get the guy stuff out there. And then on the other side, so the get the guy stuff is kind of a little manipulative, right? We're talking about like being coy, be mysterious, lean back, don't text, don't be too eager, that kind of stuff, right? Which is almost on the pickup artist. On that
spectrum. And I've listened to some of that as a guy and gone, this might be great if you're a lesbian, but this is terrible advice. This is terrible advice for get a guy.
I would lose interest.
Yeah, I would just go, this is gamey, this I can't bother with this. I'm busy. But,
some people are turned on by emotional unavailability, right?
Really?
Creates. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
The playing hard to get thing it seems to be the essence of a lot of this kind of advice.
Well, I think that people want to be, fuck, I hate saying this, but like, you don't want everything to come too easily. Right. So
yeah, I do.
Do you?
I'm busy. I'm really busy. I'm tired. I've got a lot on. Like if you got nothing else to do in your life, play games, maybe.
It comes down to like, do men really want to chase? Do they want to chase a little bit? Do you want a gazelle that's just laying on the ground, half wounded?
Okay, that's not nice.
Or do you want like, something that's a little bit more interesting? So I think there is a little bit of truth to it, but there's a limit to it. And then I think on the other side, you have these tantric embodiment teachers.
Right. There's another step, the other side, right? The kind of
that's the other side of the yeah. So I don't know, man. I'm just trying to offer like really practical suggestions on how to get clarity around what you want. And also, is it possible to get that in the relationship that you have, right? So there's a lot of women that are unsatisfied in their current relationship because their partner is emotionally unavailable or isn't present or is a little shut down or just hasn't been celebrated in their emotions, right? And so I just give them tools and suggestions on how can you create an even more fulfilling relationship than the one that you already have, or how to be really intentional about the kind of dating that you're doing.
Okay, so that's back to sort of being honest, right? Like, hey, this is what I actually want.
Yeah, I'm like in the middle of the road. Like, let's stop playing games. Let's just be honest about it. Let's open the door for connection and then let the other person decide whether they want to, walk through that door, open it a little bit more, kind of close it, right? So that's where my approach.
And it is scary, right? It's scary for everyone, the whole dating thing, because there's levels of vulnerability in this, right? Like, why aren't everyone honest? Because, well, there's kind of different games being played, different, and there's fears, isn't there? There's fears. You ask someone out, maybe, you've particularly in the kind of modern context, that could end badly.
I think fear is the root of everything that's holding us back, right? I really do think the fear of rejection is a big piece. I think feeling inadequate, right? Either not enough or too much. Interestingly enough, I think that if I'm too much for someone, it's because I'm not enough this. Like if I'm too intense, because I'm not a chill enough.
Right.
And so it sort of comes down to like feelings of inadequacy, right? I'm not enough. I don't deserve the love, or I'm not worthy of this love, or I'm terrified of rejection. And it's actually interesting. Like, what is rejection? Like, actually, what happens when you get rejected? Right. You feel pain.
Right. And I remember getting past that. Like, there was I set myself as a mission some years back. I said, right, I was abroad, away from home. And I thought, I'm going to ask 100 women for a date. Just going to find people who I find attractive as a girls in a country where that was relatively easy. And I'm just going to walk up to them really politely, super polite, say, hey, introduce myself, no weird chat up line, and just say, I'm Mark. Are you interested in having a coffee sometime? And after sort of like 60 rejections or something, and a whole bunch of phone numbers and stuff as well, I was surprised at the kind of hit rate, I kind of got over it. And I was like, oh, it's not so bad. They're just saying no, thank you. And I'd say, no problem. Have a lovely day. End of drama. Like, there is a way in which you can get past that, but most people don't, right? That's a pretty hardcore learning.
Yeah, and I think I got over it early too. In the taxi stuff, I would ask people if they, well, welcome to the Love Drive. Do you want to answer some questions? And a lot of people said no. Right. And then you say, okay, righto, where are you going? Like, let's just move on with our life. And I also think there is a difference between asking someone for a cup of coffee and getting broken up with after 4 years of a relationship, right? One of them is going to feel a lot more painful than the other. But if we're talking about that early stage rejection, I try not to take it personally. Like, they're not saying no to me. They're saying no to a relationship with me, or a coffee with me, or sex with me. Right. So if I'm making a request and they say no, I look at it as a no to the request, not to me as a person.
Right. Yeah. And it's not right now. It's like, hey, you're not my type. Like, who knows? Right. Like, not the day of the week. Who knows?
And I learned this in 12-step recovery a long time ago. Just some guy said, I don't even know. It's not even one of the principles, but what other people think of me is none of my business.
Right. Got it.
And I love that, especially if it's people that like are not in my inner circle. If you're in my inner circle and you got a problem with me or you reject me, I'm going to actually take that information and I'm going to analyze it. How much of this is true? What's my part in this? How can I grow? How can I be better? But if it's like someone I don't know or someone I barely know, it doesn't really matter what they think.
You're right. right? It's not so important. And there is a big gender difference in this one, right? Just because of the supply and demand dynamic, to use a not such a nice term. Men are rejected a lot more than women in general, right? Like that's not an experience women have had as much experience on the whole.
I don't. That must be true, but because my audience is so skewed towards women, I hear a lot about them feeling rejected or being terrified of being rejected. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that people are going to want to be with you, right?
Sure, but there's just look, like your kind of 80-20 rule on Tinder, right? Like men are swiping left 20% of the time, women are swiping left 80% of the time.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Dynamic. It's just in terms of numbers. I mean, that's all other things being equal, right? Obviously, if someone's very attractive, very charming, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so men are more used to being rejected, but also I think maybe the societal narrative for men is that it'll make you stronger, right? It's like something to overcome, and that will eventually make you a better leader. Right. We're not. Yeah, so I don't think women are getting that same message that it's going to make you stronger.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, the few times I've turned women down for sex. It is shocking to them, though. I've definitely seen a sort of like, whoa.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, actually, I've got to work tomorrow. I'm teaching. It's kind of late. I'm just not that into you, I'm afraid. Have a lovely evening. Like, that's shocking to someone.
Yeah. Now, I remember being invited to a woman's house in Montreal, and she made me dinner. It was really sweet. And then we were making out, and she was like, do you want to go to the bedroom? And I go, yeah, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not ready to have sex with you. And she was like, what do you mean? And she took that really personally. And it's not that I didn't want to, I just wasn't ready to.
Right.
This is like our second date, and I just didn't like the feeling inside, the eros just wasn't there. And I could have like faked my way through it, and we probably could have had fun. I might have regretted it after, and I didn't want to put myself in that situation.
Yeah, and there's, in my experience, it's again gross generalization. Women seem better at being tuned into that. Like, hey, I'm not quite ready here, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely times I've been dating someone, so hey, let's do this, and they've gone, you know what? I'm not quite there yet, and that's tuning into a kind of embodied, felt sense of where are we at right now. And I think a lot of guys are a bit blind to that. Maybe we're conditioned to feel like we should always be kind of ready.
Yeah, definitely. And also shut down, right? Not as tuned in to the more subtle sensations of desire within the body. And oftentimes I think we're on autopilot, right? There's this idea of just because we can have sex, we should have sex, right? There's a sort of scarcity mentality. Get it while you can. Get as much of it as you can, because that's not always going to be the fact, right?
Yeah, and there is definitely different availability there, certainly for young men and young women. As people age, maybe it changes. Okay, what are the most common questions you get? Like, you take a lot of questions. I'm sure you have your classics. What are the classics you get?
Oh, man, that's such a hard question because I get so many questions. One of the ones that just drives me bananas is, he said this or he did this. What does it mean?
What it means, what it says.
Well, but my answer is always like, how the fuck should I know? Right? Ask them. Get clarity from the one person. They will ask everybody but the only person that can really shed some light on what's going on.
Right.
Like, he said he really likes me, but he's not ready for a relationship. What does that mean? I mean, that one's actually pretty clear. It means he is enjoying spending time with you, but doesn't want to commit to being in a relationship with you. But people will not ask for clarity. They're just terrified. Again, rejection, right?
What if this means that he doesn't like me is for me and not enough?
Or does it mean that he's not going to change his mind? He's actually not available for a relationship when I really hope that he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of questions he said this, he did this, what does it mean, right? So people are asking everybody but the one person. And then you get a lot of people saying, yeah, but they'll lie, right? Men lie. You'll ask them if they like you or if they want a relationship with you, and they say, yeah, but how can you really trust that? So they're looking for all these other indicators. I've
seen that. I've seen that a lot. I guess maybe there's some sort of honest signals. I've heard someone call this. Like, it's like there's a constant trick being played, and you've got to unearth it. Is the kind of theory, right? Like, it's like, okay, what's the real thing here?
Yeah, and also I think this is, comes from not wanting to waste your time, right? People
Yeah.
don't want to waste their time getting to know someone if it's not going to go somewhere, right?
And that framing right there is also, particularly when dating in my 30s, I was on the receiving end of that. Like, I don't want to waste my time. And I kind of felt like a potential sperm donor interview at that point. And I was kind of like, how about we just have dinner first and see if we like each other, like that's the sort of female objectification version of a guy who just wants sex. It's kind of like the woman who's like, yeah, but are you going to be my husband, provider, and father to my children? I'm like, we've just met. Like, and I get that might be a question after a year.
I just asked you for coffee on the street. Give me a break here.
Like, am I wasting my time with you? Like, that whole frame is pretty unpleasant, right?
It is, and I understand it because there are a lot of men that are going to pretend like they want more from you when all they really want is sex. And I think my whole work actually came from me wanting sex, but not wanting to mislead people into thinking I wanted more.
Right, being really honest about that. Because there are a bunch of people who also just want women who just want sex as well, who are like, look, I'm also not looking for it.
Yeah, there was and that's what I found. When you're honest about where you're at, look, I'm only open to a sexual connection, and it might only be once. That was the hard one. Might only want to have sex with you once. And some people were like, oh, okay, I totally respect that. That is not for me. Good luck. And I had other people saying, that's great. Let's do it. I might only want to do it once too. Right.
Yeah, so I can imagine a lot of people at that point going, whoa, this guy's a player. This guy's, like, I'm not interested here. This is
but he's not a player, because the player is the guy who promises you the world,
right,
gets what he wants, and then ghosts you. He's actually playing a game. I tried to get rid of the whole game thing and just be really honest, and I found that worked for a lot of people.
Yeah. I remember when I was kind of like traveling places, it was almost easier to be in that mode. So I'm like, look, I'm just in Austin for a couple of weeks. And, I live in the UK. I'm not looking for a relationship, but, if you'd love to have a date, something fun can happen. And like, it was kind of easier in that context,
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you're traveling, there's already a little built-in mechanism there, or some, it's knowledge that you're probably not going to stick around. Not to say that you can't fall in love and make a radical life change. But if we go back to the wasting your time thing, I think it is important to point out that there are women who want to have biological children with a partner. And so there is a deadline there, right?
Right.
That we don't have. So we can afford to waste a little bit more time.
Well, we do have, and men have it, I think, maybe more than they think, but it's we've got a few more years generally, right?
I mean, sure. Isn't it Mick Jagger had a kid at like 75?
Yeah, but the percentages go right down, and usually it's like high testosterone rock stars, who are probably TRT enhanced and things. But it's the percentages go right down. Like, I'm sorry, Shaun, but we're shooting some blanks by the time we get to our age, just biologically.
Well, I'm only 40. I don't know how old you are.
43, but I mean, statistically, your sperm are not what they used to be. This is just medical facts. I'm sorry to break it to you.
I might have to go. I might have to go freeze my sperm.
It's we're down to like 50% potency or something, I think, by this point.
50 seems good.
It's not quite as much as women, but it's I get your point. Like, there's a hard close there for women at an earlier age.
A little bit more, yeah. But I also think that wasting. If you do see every relationship that hasn't been successful as a waste of time, then I think that in of itself is a waste of time, because relationships are our teachers. Right. We learn from every relationship, even if we're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. There is a time where you are going to go, okay, wow, that is a pattern that needs to change. Right. You're going to get some awareness around what's working, what's not working, what I want, what I don't want, which will inform your future decisions. So it's never really a waste of time. It's helping you calibrate for what you actually want or what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I remember when I made the move of saying, you know what, I'm only going to date people I find really interesting and intelligent. So that way, if nothing sexual comes out of it, I'm still having a good conversation. I'm still learning something. Again, dating abroad, I found that always just like, wow, I'm learning loads about this country, culture. This is interesting,
Yeah.
Like having that aspect. Or other questions you get asked a lot. So what does he really mean? What else do you get asked a lot?
Well, I'm really curious. Why do you think your hit rate was so low in Paris?
French don't like the English. And they French women don't like English men. They regard us as uncultured and unelegant and uncivilized, which is probably true. I mean, in terms of where it was best, you know, Russia, United States, because of the accent, Brazil, because of the blue eyes. I mean, everyone should play away from home. I mean, you know, my wife is Ukrainian. I had significantly more chances in Ukraine than I would have done in England. And my Ukrainian friend, female friend, who's now living in, well, I won't say, but a Western European country, she's gone from being in small town Ukraine and having 3 very average guys, maybe, who she could date and she has to marry one, to thousands of people in Western Europe. I mean, I'd say to any young person listening to this, if you're looking for a partner, like, traveling is with a few exceptions, like being English in Paris, I think it's a huge plus.
Yeah, don't be English in Paris. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, you know, traveling is not accessible to everybody, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true, particularly now. But I mean, there's different versions of that, though, isn't there, in terms of even within a city, versions of the arbitrage. Other things people ask you a lot then, what is the one that you kind of like roll your eyes, you've heard it so many times?
A lot of stuff around attachment theory.
Okay.
A lot of, you know, like, are you familiar with attachment theory?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the idea is that basically, like, the way our caretakers, the relationships we had with our caretakers is going to inform our relationships in moving forward. And you can either be sort of securely attached, which is sort of the holy grail that everybody wants, or there's the avoidant folks that are, you know, are going to be harder to pin down, are going to be wishy-washy, hot, cold. Yeah. And then you've got the anxious folks that are just like, are going to be like, you know, quote unquote, more needy and need more attention. And so I get a lot of questions around attachment theory. And, you know, I'm anxious, he's avoidant. Can it ever work? What's that?
I teach that as cats and dogs.
Okay,
two cats can date each other, 2 dogs can date each other, cat and a dog can't date each other.
So the cats are the avoidance, and the dogs. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
People kind of, you got a dog behind you there. Dogs like, do you love me? I love you. Do you love me? Like that's my wife's extreme cat person. So it's like, you just have to be. She's like, I'm going out to play poker. I'll be back in 3 days. Okay. Since
yeah, cats and dogs. That's interesting. Yeah. And I think that cats and dogs can mix. I really think they can, you know,
find a way to kind of communicate across that. How crazy is too crazy? So like, my wife and I are both quite mad. We're both really odd people, but we make it work. And, you know, partly that's learning about each other, moderating our own tendencies, learning how to communicate with each other, being clear with each other. But there's definitely people I've dated in the past where I just go, I don't think you can have a healthy relationship with anyone.
Yeah, I think
like there is a line, right?
Oh, there is absolutely a line. I think if you're not getting treatment, right? I've at this point now, I've been in therapy for, you know, a third of my life.
Yeah.
Right. Because I am quite neurotic as well. Interestingly enough, every woman I've ever dated has said, actually, you're quite easy to be with. You know, you're a very easy person to be with. But I think if you lack self-awareness, if you lack wanting to better yourself, right? So personal development, if you lack the tools or the accessibility to mental health, right? Not everyone can get mental health treatment. I think that you're going to struggle a lot in relationship.
There are definitely trauma issues, which maybe no fault of someone's own, you know, but just mean that it's going to be difficult for them to have an ongoing intimate relationship with anyone.
And you know, if going back to attachment, we heal in relationship.
For sure.
Right. And even the therapeutic relationship, we heal in relationship with our therapist. Like I'm actively healing because of the therapeutic relationship that I have with my therapist, right? And the safety and comfort that she provides, she's almost like, you know, reparenting me to a certain degree. She's giving me the kind of attention and love and support that I didn't get growing up.
Yeah.
You know, I got a whole bunch of it, and there was just some pieces that were obviously missing because everybody's missing something growing up.
With my mentees, I'm just like, okay, I'm a good dad today. You know, it's like, this is my job to be good, encouraging dad. Says it's going to be fine. I spent a lot of time doing that. I quite like it. Okay, so can we get too crazy? I mean, there's also, we're in a crazy context, right? Like people say modern dating is difficult, but we're also in a very unsexy, urban, stressed, sleep-deprived life. Like modern life isn't particularly sexy, is it? You know, I think that context is tricky.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, you just touched on sleep. I think that without proper sleep, we are not operating at anywhere near where we could be. And it makes everything more difficult, right? You're going to be more emotionally reactive. You're going to be touchy. You're going to sort of lose touch with your gratitude practice, what's working in your life. So sleep is one of the things that I'm really trying to optimize for, because it makes for like a happier me, regardless of whether I'm in a relationship or not.
Right. And why is it so tricky, sleep? Like, I know people have those rings, they try and manage it, and people, you go on the app, I see that. And, people get a bit neurotic. We're going to have the blackout curtains and get exactly 8 hours and no phones before bed. And there's all this advice. But first of all, almost no one does all that shit. Right.
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at
yeah. You've just made it a discipline. Like,
well, now the older I get, the earlier I fucking wake up, Mark. I can't fucking sleep past 6, and now it's even getting into the 5 zones, and I'm pretty upset about it.
Yeah, cracking open early, yeah.
I
just find it tricky to unwind at the end of the day. Like we're gonna finish this podcast at 7:30. I have dinner, might go for a little walk, in the evening, kind of chill out a little bit, and it's like, before I know it, I'm looking at my watch. It's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking it's time for bed, and I'm not there yet.
Well, I think what people are saying is that when we're up late doing stuff like playing on our phone or watching TV, it's because we are just trying to get more time for ourselves, because our lives are so full of other people, right? And we're not ready to turn it off and start all over in the morning, because when you wake up, it's go time for a lot of people.
Yeah, go o'clock. I found the critical thing was when I stopped working. If I stopped working around now, like 7:30 latest, I can just about get to bed at a decent time. But if I work until 8 or 9, I'm going to be up till past midnight, because I need that own my time to myself,
Yeah, I mean, and I try to work less. I work less than you do. I work. I don't have people.
Sean? What's the secret?
Don't hire a bunch of people who are like dependent on you for a paycheck.
I've had enough, Shaun. I've had enough. I don't mind doing podcasts, but I've had enough of a lot of the other stuff. I quit. I tap out. I can't do it anymore. Fuck it out.
That's one of the tips. That's my number one tip.
Session for me, but
that's my one tip. So yeah, sleep is hard, man. Life is full. We're on treadmills. We're trying to pay the bills. We're trying to do all the things that experts are suggesting about, meditating X amount of hours a week and exercising and getting type 2 zone 2 cardio, 200 minutes a week. And then we got to
light exposure in the morning, the breath to cold showers.
That's right. Then we got, I don't even have kids. If you have kids, like, forget all that stuff goes out the window,
This optimized life stuff. I used to be like looking for this like perfectly optimized, Huberman, great podcast, and be like, hey, you got to do this, you got to eat at this window, you got to fast, you got to breath work. And at the moment I'm going through this stage, I can't be fucked, Shaun. Like, I'm doing some basic stuff like exercise, a little bit of exercise, a little bit of meditation, stuff I know just helps my mood.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like right now, like a lot of people, I'm kind of coping and getting through a difficult time. Like, the world's in one. And this idea of like the perfectly optimized life, it doesn't attract me anymore either. Even if I thought it was possible, which I'm not sure it is.
No, I think it's just, I get it. Remember, the OG is Tim Ferriss' 4-hour work week. That's the OG dude, like 20 years ago. And that was the ideal, is that I'll only work 4 hours a week. And that guy's been working 80 hours a week ever since.
There's no way he works 4 hours a week. What are you talking about? There's no way.
So I like to do a little bit of the optimizing stuff, as long as it fits with my schedule in my life, and I'm also super relaxed about it.
Relaxed optimization.
Relaxed optimization. It's like the George Cow is one of our marketing buddies.
Yeah, good for it.
He says, be strict about showing up, but relax about the results.
Yeah. I've definitely in middle age learned to be a bit more gentle with myself about my own practice. Otherwise, it's just a way to brutalize yourself, which gets, and if you're not results, and it's not kind.
You're not gentle with yourself, you're unlikely to be gentle with others as well.
Yeah.
Right. So if we go back to dating or even relationships, be strict about showing up. Like, go to the date, but don't have any expectations about the fact you're going to meet, the love of your life, or that you're going to be fucking witty and amazing and interesting the whole way through. Just show up, right?
Be nice, be polite, show up and be polite. So we are conditioned weirdly around dating, right? So it's either the Hollywood love, one of your dreams is one and only has to meet all your needs unrealistically, or is porn. That's the other thing, particularly young people are kind of grown up with, as another kind of influence, or Mills and Boone, which is another crazy kind of influence. And then on top of that, you've got this weird gender war going on where young women are told as a given that they live in a patriarchy and men are oppressing women. That's a given to young women now. Like, oh, you do realize that half the population who you, by the way, have to date and marry, that they're oppressing you. Like that's kind of a weird frame to be dating within. I mean, like these are some funny frames we're entering into. Like, is there a healthier one that we can take on?
It's funny. My friend has two young daughters, and her, I think 10-year-old came home and she was like, "Mommy, I don't know who I like yet. I really hope it's girls, but I think it's boys."
Oh no, because boys smell.
Because boys smell, and because they're going to oppress me for the rest of my life. Like they're going to make my life difficult.
Wow. Yeah. Like this, I would change the school immediately. But
I don't know what a healthier frame is. I think I've just been struggling with this idea that life is just really fucking hard.
Life is hard. That's it.
Life
is hard. Everything is running a business is hard. Health is hard. Sean, everything is hard except my 43-year-old. No, let's not go there. Okay.
Everything is hard, and life isn't fair, and you're going to struggle a whole lot. And what will help is being surrounded by an inner circle of kind, loving people who love you.
That's true.
Right.
Dating is unfair, isn't it? Like, I know some really good people who have just had some terrible luck.
Yeah, dating is unfair. I mean, if we could just put all the really good people together, but there's just someone that's gonna be like, yeah, their elbows are a little too ashy, So we're like, what about all the other stuff? Like, yeah, it's just not gonna work for me. Yeah. We're really picky. We're really, really, really picky.
Yeah.
And Alan, Alan de Botton, he's a School of Life guy, School of Love. He's a big fan of the good enough relationships.
Right. I remember, been married for a few years, and there's a certain point you go, I hope she doesn't listen to this. The thought pops up, oh, maybe I'll trade her in. And then you go, no, what? No, I love this person. But part of your brain is going, yeah, but I'm just going to make something up because it's not fair otherwise. Her elbows are too pointy. This isn't true. I'm just making some stupid thing up. Or there's something you go, well, it'd be a bit better if, that. And I go, hang on a minute, this person, we get on well, we're friendly, there's love, there's intimacy, we've shared great experience, there's real commitment.
Yeah.
But the elbows, it's part of the brain, particularly in a disposable consumer culture where we're told to do that. I don't think our grandparents did that. And maybe there's a happy medium between being stuck in a marriage you hate because you have to, because society will shame you if you don't. Yeah. And this kind of disposability culture.
I mean, your grandparents, there was like Gertrude down the road who was the baker's daughter. And then there was, the cobbler's son, and that was just, written in the stars. There was no other option.
My grandfather had to walk 6 miles to the local barn dance in Ireland in order to ask one of 6 girls to dance,
And now we have, limitless opportunities at our fingertips, and it's too much. It's too much, right? Yeah. So I think one of my suggestions is, if you're complaining about dating and you're not on dating apps, try dating apps. If you're complaining about dating apps, stop using dating apps and go meet people in the real world.
And then one of the best meeting people in the real world, however you call that, done ethically and respectably, men or women, I think that's one of the best embodied trainings, just because you are confronted by vulnerability and confidence. And am I reading the situation right? Like, is this appropriate right now? Like, in terms of learning social skills, in terms of, centering practice for my students who are listening to this, like I've held the hand of a female student and said, look, you can just go talk to that guy. It's a public place. Find a reason, compliment him. She's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And this is like successful businesswoman who's, PhD, all these guys. Just go say hello. I'll be right here. I'll be right here across the street. And like, that's the terrifying. You add the trauma stuff on top of that. In this case, it wasn't about that, but in some cases it could be. Like, it's a terrifying prospect, and learning to interact in the real world is certainly a challenge for some.
I think that, I mean, I love that story, and I just can picture you sort of being good dad, right? Being
good dad. I'm right here. You look great. Worst he's gonna say is, I'm married. Thank you for the compliment. You know, it's like, this is easy. This is easy.
Yeah, I do think that talking to strangers, putting yourself in situations on a regular basis, you know, whether it's a meetup group or something that you enjoy doing where there's new people coming in, I think is so much more valuable than sitting on your couch perfecting your dating profile and sending out messages.
Right? It gets easier, doesn't it? And I saw post-COVID, some people had some problems with this who'd been kind of locked down for a while, and you can get out of the habit quite quickly of meeting. Forget about dating, just meeting people, right? Like in my job, I do courses. So I'm like, hi, where are you from? You know, I'm meeting people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Start with meeting people. If you're terrified of meeting people, you're not going to go meet someone to go on a date with, right?
That's next level.
That's next level. Just go say hi to people. Go give people, like, I like giving people disposable compliments, right?
Nice.
You walk by someone, you say, fucking love your style, and you keep walking.
Right. Like, I'm not going anywhere with this. I'm not trying to get anything with this. I just want to say you look amazing in that dress. Have a great day.
Totally. That's it. Right. And then eventually you can get more comfortable. You use the word confidence a few times, and I teach my students to be courageous rather than confident.
Okay. What's your distinction there? That's a nice
one. Well, because confidence comes after having a bunch of successful experiences.
Oh, I see.
So if you don't have successful experiences, you can't, this whole fake it till you make it shit is garbage, because I would much rather you pump yourself up, right? You got your inner Mark inside you saying, you look great. Just do this. You're going to have a great time. The worst case is he's married and he's going to be flattered. I'd much rather you try to muster up courage than confidence, because courage you can have without having the lived, sensed experience of success.
Yeah.
Right? Or having a successful encounter.
And also, I think defining success as having the courage. Like, I remember I was in a gym, and I'd gone to that gym for ages, and I was like, girl in the gym, I really like the look of, she seemed cool, but I didn't want to hassle her in the gym. And, you know, it's my last day in the gym, so I was changing gym. So I just, as she was leaving, I'm like, fuck it, this is my chance. You know, I knew I was going to be leaving the gym the next day. And I went up to her and said, listen, I hope this isn't creepy. I just want to say you look lovely. You look great. And she just said, stop right there. She said, I've seen you in gym. You seem like a cool guy. She said, but I'm such a lesbian. And I could tell she was completely being honest. You know, it's just, and then she laughed and she said, but you're so brave that you came and talked to me. I just want to, thanks, you've made my day. I'm going to go tell my wife all about this. She's going to be jealous. You know, and afterwards I was glowing, because I was like, I had the balls to at least say hi. You know, and that was my success. It wasn't the fact it didn't go anywhere or whatever.
Yeah, you also had a positive experience, right? So you're going to feel more confident after having done the courageous act.
I feel for guys who've had a lot of negative experience. I've been pretty lucky with girlfriends, with dating. You know, I've had some knockdowns, some Russian women look through me like I didn't exist. If you can survive of dating in Russia, you'll toughen you up. But on the whole, it's been pretty positive. But there are definitely guys that have pretty, and I'm guessing women too, such negative experiences that it just knocks them back, because you remember those, right?
Yeah.
You only have to have 1 in 10 negative for your system to feel, ugh.
Well, what's unfair is that it's like two, seasoned schmoozers giving people dating advice on how to talk to strangers in public. Like, I was in sales for X amount of years.
And I'm an embodiment teacher, so we were already at a plus, right?
Right. Like I used to cold call. When I worked for Yahoo, I used to cold call for a couple of years, and the success, there was metrics for success, which was 80 phone calls a day with a 4-hour talk time. Right. So I did that for 2 years.
So the rejection practice is huge there, right?
I forgot that I was an incredibly successful salesperson because I made a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Total strangers, and get them to try to talk to me,
like those charity people in the street, like those guys must be great at dating because they've just had so much practice of being knocked back.
Okay, so funny story about those. The like, do you have a second to save the children? People,
Yeah.
I was thinking of. I made a joke about this on my Instagram. Is that I would stand in the street with a clipboard saying, "Do you have a minute to talk about maybe going on a date with me?"
See what people would say.
And I feel like that would be a really successful strategy.
I found it's a good way to get rid of them when they bother me in the street. So like a gentleman would say, hey, do you want to sign up to save the children? And I'll be like, no, but you have beautiful eyes. Right. And then they leave pretty quickly in my experience. That's a good way of ending the interaction.
You get them to leave their corner, right? The corner they've been working on for the last hour.
Anyway, Shaun, this is good stuff, but we need to wrap up, right? So what do they follow you on Instagram? TikTok? Where do people go?
At the Love Drive on Instagram, TikTok, and then the Love Drive podcast, which you're going to be a guest on eventually when I find the time to invest in that vertical of my business.
Wow, make the time. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I love doing the podcast. I've been just chatting away. Listeners, I know this is a terrible interview. I didn't ask you much. I'm just chatting, sharing my own experiences. I know sometimes, listeners, I'm a terrible fucking interviewer, but I'm mostly just doing it because I like talking to these people.
These are my favorite kinds of interviews.
Ones that are just chatty, that are actually a real conversation, share stories.
I can't stand the ones where they just have like 7 questions and they don't share any story. Like I have to ask them questions. I start interviewing them so that I can learn about them a little bit.
The ones I don't like is when the American guests come on and they've got a pre-prepared fucking cardboard spiel.
Yeah.
And then they just go out the box with it. And I'm like, no, dude, this is Embodiment Podcast. I want a real fucking conversation here. Like even if it's messy and 2 ways. And anyway, so where do people go again, Shaun? Tell us the links.
At the Love Drive, just Google the Love Drive, and then there's the Love Drive podcast. I've got 200 episodes of solo stuff and guest stuff on love, dating, and relationships.
A pleasure. Learn something every time. Nice to talk to you, Shaun.
An honor.
Mark Walsh here. If you like that, you'll probably like embodimentunlimited.com and our app. So on both of these things, you can get a bunch of podcasts that aren't available here, some exclusive ones with some big names, some people you'll probably recognize that are over there. There's a copy of my book, PDF of my first book on embodiment, which seems to people like. I sold quite a few copies on Amazon, but there's a free copy there. What else is there? Loads of videos of me coaching embodiment, resources on trauma, on meditation, on yoga. And you can also chat to people without going on Facebook or any of that nonsense. So if you want to chat embodiment people, that's there. And it's on the embodimentunlimited.com, all free, and the app available at the App Store and all that good stuff. So if you like this, do check those out.